Warning. This podcast is about the horror genre, specifically horror films. As most horror movies are filled with coarse language, violence, and/or gore, the topics and language of the cast of the pod will also reflect the genre. If you have any issues with the aforementioned warnings, please press stop. But if you have no issue with adult language, movie violence, or the accoutrement that accompanies horror films, please feel free to continue. You have been warned.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ghouls and ghosts and whatever and others and stuff like that. Deb didn't know I was going to say that, but this is the cast of the pod. It is a springboard jump off thing of the Bucket of Popcorn podcast. On this podcast, we're going to focus on horror movies. And here's the gimmick. What we're going to do is we're going to have fans of movies on the podcast as well. And we'll get into our guest today shortly. That sounds kind of weird.
For a second, when you did the intro, I thought you were going to say cool cats and stuff.
Cool cats? No, Deborah, please. No. And as a forewarning to whoever's listening, we are recording this on the eve of July 4th. So it's July 3rd. And there's a bunch of idiots outside our $1 million soundproof studio popping fireworks.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's get to our guest, a special guest today on the cast of the pod. He is an up-and-coming wrestling star. He's worked with several companies, including Impact Wrestling, and many promotions in the South Texas area. He is none other than Drew Who.
Who?
Drew Who.
Who?
Drew, how you doing?
I'm great. How about y'all?
You know. But
it's hard to say that nowadays.
Yeah, how are you doing? Breathing? Is that a good thing?
Yeah. I don't want to offend you, but
Oh man. So Drew, you picked, and now it's something that you and I just talked about right before we started recording. We're going to talk about, different movies that tie into the movies that we're going to talk about. But today, and what I hope to do with the cast of the pod is highlight movies for our guests. Something that the guests pick and we can talk about. And you picked Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2, not the Rob Zombie Halloween 2.
No, the 1981 Halloween 2.
Yes, starring Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes, I say that like I lived it, like I was born in 1970 something, but no.
What's wrong with being born in 1970 something?
People are going to be like, oh, you weren't around when you watched it. Oh, come on.
No. As a matter of fact, I haven't told you what I think about the movie or anything like that, but knowing that you weren't around when this movie comes out and you still like it, and as much as you've told me what you like about the movie and all that, I'm intrigued to talk about it with you. And, you said this is one of your favorites.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw out there right now, spoiler alert, I don't like this movie.
Oh,
you just offended all of our guests and listeners.
I think my heart dropped.
Deborah said we offended all of our guests. We only have one guest, so technically.
And listeners.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And we only have one listener, so no.
And Drew, you just offended him.
Drew, what do you, and we just watched the movie today, just to remind us, to give us a heads up about this. What do you like about this movie? What is it that
I mean, I'm not just like it. I loved it. It's literally not just any horror film, but I love this movie and any, all the movies, basically, all-time favorite, all-time movies. I love Halloween for so many reasons, too, sorry. How great of a movie it was for a sequel, I think. There's not too many movies out there that are good as the first one, you know what I mean, after they make the first one. The sequel was great. I loved how it takes place right after the first one.
Okay, that I do too. Now, real quick before we go further into it, I don't mean to cut you off. Sorry about that. This is going to be different than a lot of aspects of our world today in 2020, and this is going to be different than a lot of aspects in horror podcasts. I don't know if you've ever listened to any, Drew, but there's horror snobs, and it has to be exactly this, and it has to be exactly that. We can accept here at Cast of the Pod that different people have different opinions, and I'm not going to convince you that this movie's horrible. If you love this movie and you say it's the best sequel for a horror movie ever and all that, that's fine. I can accept that that's your opinion, and my opinion is that I'm not all that thrilled with the movie.
Yeah.
And that is okay. That's what makes the world go round. So I just wanted to throw that out there first. So I'm not going to try to convince you of anything.
Oh, no.
So
like I said, I loved how it's, really good from the first one. I mean, like I said, it takes place minutes after, because you have, some of these movies where a second one is made after the first one, obviously. It takes place months after or years, and it goes back in time describing what happened after, that Halloween night. Again, I just love how this movie shows what happened right after it showed, Michael disappeared.
Now, a lot of people kind of bit off of Halloween after the popularity of it and after things that came out. You are correct. I don't think there was another horror movie or a sequel like this that was done immediately after the end of the first one since like the 30s or 40s with like Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
So this was a what's the word I'm looking for? It was up in the forefront, a trailblazer, if you will. Now, I'll let you know that I've seen the movie. I probably saw it back in the mid 80s. Or saw it at a mom and pop rental place. But I hadn't seen it in the 2000s, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that's why we watched it today, and I could not lift my what do you call it, the veil of disbelief enough, because I'm watching the movie and I'm like, why is Michael so skinny? He's like 135 pounds.
And he's all stiff.
Well, see, now this is where we're going to talk about other movies, and we're going to go further into it. And this is where we differ from other horror podcasts. What made Michael unkillable? What made him the immortal Shape? Because they called him the Shape for part one.
I guess it just makes you think like this guy can be supernatural when you think about it. He has a supernatural feel. Like in the first one, he shot him, like 5 times at the end, and he's gone. And then in this second one, he shot him 6 times or something like that.
Yes, that's definitely something I want to talk about, because he actually shot him 8 times.
He shot him 6 times.
8 times.
He shot him 8 times with a 6-shot revolver. And this is where I should have suspended my level of disbelief there. But he shot him 8 times with a 6-shot revolver, unless he had a 22 long round, which they made back in the early 80s with 8 shots. They also made a 357, but if you would have shot him with 357 8 times, I mean, that would have blown chunks off of him. But yeah, he did say 6 times, 3 times.
I shot him 6 times. I shot him 6 times. I shot him 6 times.
Call the cops. I shot him.
Call the cops for the right there.
Yeah. And another thing that kind of pissed me off, and I'll be honest with you, the stunt of when he fell off, I was like, that looks kind of weird, but I was just keeping that to myself. And Deborah says, was he floating in the sky, or was he standing on something? And we rewound it, and
you can see it.
I mean, he was on the balcony, but he was at the same level of the railing around, like he was standing on a box or something.
I couldn't agree with that, because in the first one, he fell in the back, and in this one, he fell in the front.
Yeah,
front yard. So that I remember watching that first time, that kind of threw me off. I was like, wait, didn't he like fall from the back? But I guess he transported to the front, I guess. So I don't know.
From what I understand, well, go ahead, Deb.
I was gonna say, and then he was so heavy And when he fell and landed on the grass, he made a grass
there's a
angel.
print, yeah.
He left a Looney Tunes print, a Wile E. Coyote body outline.
I was like, look, that's where he fell.
The only thing that would have made it better is if he would have held up a little sign that said "Yipe" before he fell. No, when he left his imprint on the ground. But
Picked up like Shawn Michaels.
I told Josh, did you put the right Halloween 2 in there? Because I didn't know it was comedy.
well, you know,
Oh
they have to change the story up a little bit, you know, to wind it into that. Because when they made the first one, they had no intention of making a part 2. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did know that. Yes.
Oh, well, I mean, now what's the point of telling them if you already knew?
Well, now you can talk about it.
Well, if there's anybody listening to a horror podcast that didn't know about Michael Myers, yeah, right. Because
I'm not one of those people, but yeah.
they were gonna do a Halloween series about different Halloween stories, and season of the Witch was gonna be Halloween 2, but Halloween 1 was so, because they spent $300,000 to make it, and it ended up being this huge financial success.
Yeah.
And the true answer to why does Michael Myers not die? It's because he makes money.
So they bring him back.
And they were like, oh shit, we need to continue this movie. We'll put the witch on the back burner, the masks on the back burner, and we'll just, what happened to Michael Myers? What happened to Laurie Strode?
Mm-hmm.
And they made part 2. And then part 2 did not do well at all. And they're like, yeah, let's go back to the witches. And then they brought out Season of the Witch, which I love.
That's my favorite
I love
one.
Halloween 3.
Yeah, my cousin, that's my favorite. That's his favorite one. He always tells me about it.
And I can accept it as a completely different series, completely different movie. I'm not going to say, you know, oh, well, this was better than all the other ones, because I love part 1.
Mm-hmm.
I even love the Rob Zombie part 1.
Yes, I do too.
Now the Rob Zombie part, the Rob Zombie part 2 was so bad that night I had to go to the ER afterwards. Remember? It was just coincidental. Deborah and I went to the Silverado Theater to go watch Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie remake.
That's pretty scary. With the lights all flickering and everything. That's scary.
But, so you didn't like the Rob Zombie part 1?
No, it's a different feel. I don't know. I really didn't like it.
I liked it as in apples and oranges, completely different. I liked seeing how he was a sick and twisted kid.
Okay, like the origins and all that.
And they could not have picked a better little asshole than that actor. Because ever since he came out in Hancock with Will Smith, I was like, I hate that kid.
Oh yeah, that was him.
Yeah, and then he launched him into orbit, and I'm like, yes.
I liked how they still kept him as Michael Myers. Like they kept him as the bad guy and not said, "Oh, poor little."
Oh,
like how they've been doing with
how
the
they
villains.
have to show like how Maleficent was a victim, and that's what made her bad, and all the villains really aren't all that bad. They just had a bad story behind. Yeah. Michael's an asshole, that a killing machine. So, do you think he was a zombie?
I mean, now that you say that, I think he looked more of a zombie. I mean, first of all, the guy who played Michael Myers, holy crap, 6 foot, 5, 200, 60 something pounds. That's a big Michael Myers. That's very frightening.
That's in the first movie though.
First one though, but still, holy crap.
Because in the second movie, he was like my height. He was like 6 foot, 120 pounds.
I love how they just do that. Just ignore the first one how he was, and the second one's just going to keep him really short.
Or maybe they used a different camera lens or something where he just looked really scrawny. You know, he looked like somebody that got picked on in high school or something, and just. See, now that's I wrote a couple of notes down, and of some things that I liked and didn't like about the movie. What did on Halloween 2 when he goes next door and he gets the knife from the old lady and the old man, and she's making the sandwiches?
Oh yeah, the ham and all that. Yeah,
and the mayonnaise on the sandwiches. So she screams after she gets the 2 drops of blood after he just got shot 6 times. And then the girl next door, the first kill, I think her name